Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, whatever you are. Welcome to the Esoteric Podcast. In today's episode, we will be looking at the wonderful article by Rhoda Wilson on the expose, Meet the Great Reset King, Charles III. Let's get into it. For decades, attempts have been made to use climate change to justify radical policy changes, but the Great Reset is the most ambitious and radical plan the world has seen in more than a generation. In June 2020, the World Economic Forum and then Prince Charles launched the Great Reset. In an article announcing its launch, Carl Schwab wrote that all aspects of our societies and economies must be revamped, from education to social contracts and working conditions. Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism. Charles said, "We have a golden opportunity to seize something good from this, being the coronavirus crisis. Its unprecedented shockwaves may well make people more receptive to big visions of change. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again." Shortly after the launch, The Hill wrote, "Although many details about the Great Reset won't be rolled out until the World Economic Forum meets in Davos in January 2021, the general principles of the plan are clear. The world needs massive new government programs and far-reaching policies, or, put it another way, we need a form of socialism. Now that more details have been revealed, we would argue the Great Reset is more like a radical form of totalitarian communism." Charles the Great Resetter. In January 2020, 6 months before the launch of the Great Reset, Charles attended WEF's annual meeting at Davos for the first time in 30 years. It is WEF's mission to improve the state of the world and the urgent need to shape the next 50 years that has inspired me to be with you here today. After an absence of 30 years, we are in the midst of a crisis that is now, I hope, well understood. Global warming, climate change, and the devastating loss of biodiversity are the greatest threats humanity has ever faced, said Charles. Charles launched 3 related instruments at Davos 2020, the Terra Carta, the Sustainable Markets Initiative, and the Sustainable Markets Council. When the Great Reset was officially launched in June 2020, it was not by Schwab or Bill Gates, but by Charles, the then Prince of Wales and heir apparent to the British throne. His official website announced on the 3rd of June 2020, today, through His Royal Highness's Sustainable Market Initiative and the World Economic Forum, the Prince of Wales launched a new global initiative, the Great Reset. And a royal tweet declared, "The Great Reset Initiative is designed to ensure businesses and communities build back better by putting sustainable business practices at the heart of their operations as they begin to recover from the coronavirus pandemic," as we can see in this video.
We have an incredible opportunity to create entirely new sustainable industries, investing in nature as the true engine of our economy.
The current global crisis has disrupted every aspect of our lives, but it has also presented us with an extraordinary opportunity, a chance to reset and accelerate efforts to improve the state of our world.
Changing our current trajectory will require bold and imaginative action, together with determination and decisive leadership. In order to secure our future and to prosper, we need to evolve our economic model, putting people and planet at the heart of global value creation. If there is one critical lesson we have to learn from this crisis, we need to put nature at the heart of how we operate. We are on the verge of catalytic breakthroughs that will alter our view of what is possible and profitable within the framework of a sustainable future. We need nothing short of a paradigm shift. one that inspires action at revolutionary levels and pace. We simply cannot waste any more time. The only limit is our willingness to act. And the time to act is now.
WEF released a video on the same day to mark the launch of the Great Reset. In it, Charles stressed the plan, including green policies that would suffocate businesses and individual freedoms worldwide, as a matter of urgency. He noted that this would involve net zero carbon emissions and the use of carbon pricing to achieve it. According to the World Bank, quote, "Carbon pricing is an instrument that captures the external costs of greenhouse gas emissions, the costs of emissions that the public pays for, such as damaged crops, healthcare costs from heat waves and droughts, and the loss of property from flooding and sea level rise, and ties them to their sources through a price, usually in the form of a price on the carbon dioxide emitted." End quote. Essentially, it is a carbon dioxide tax, a price on all aspects of our lives and ultimately all life on Earth. We, as all aerobic life, whether on land, in the air, or water, emit carbon dioxide as a natural byproduct of respiration or when we exhale. Breathing is a natural and necessary part of life. How far is their proposed carbon tax prepared to go? What price will they put on our heads? Who benefits financially? The answer to these questions are open-ended, but as you will work out from the next section of this, Charles has been positioning the British monarchy to take control, capitalise and benefit from carbon taxes they intend to enforce. On the WEF's YouTube channel, there is only a short excerpt from Charles's 5-minute speech to mark the launch of the Great Reset, but I'd like to present it here in its entirety.
But these are unprecedented times. Every person on the planet has been impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. Our world came to a standstill, and it became clear that we did not have the answer or the mechanisms to address such an unprecedented global threat. The threats posed by this dreadful pandemic came upon us suddenly with very little warning. The threat of climate change has been more gradual, but its devastating reality for many people and their livelihoods around the world, and its ever greater potential to disrupt, surpasses even that of COVID-19. If we look at the planet as if it were a patient, we can see that our activities have been damaging her immune system, and she has been struggling to function and thrive due to the strain we have put on her vital organs. To treat her, we need to restore balance and put nature back at the center of the circle. And to achieve this, we must act for health and well-being, understand nature's patterns and cycles, recognize the value of diversity, unity, and the interdependence of all living things, consider the importance of innovation and adaptation, and invest in nature-based solutions to help stimulate a more circular bioeconomy that gives back to nature as much as we take from her. Now, I can only hope that as this current crisis passes, we are able to reflect on and shape the type of world we want for ourselves and for future generations. Unfortunately, we so often forget that we are profoundly dependent on nature for our lives and livelihood. So, how do we balance the need to rebuild economic prosperity, the need to get people back to work against environmental concerns? Investing sustainably now can be a fast, efficient, and attractive way to reboot our economy. Therefore, what should be the principles that underlie the reshaping of a new and better global economic system? To seize this window of opportunity, I believe we need to do 5 things. First of all, to create momentum for the Great Reset, we need to capture the imagination and will of humanity. We will only change if we really want to change. Secondly, the global economic recovery must set us on a new trajectory of sustainable employment, of livelihoods and economic growth. To achieve scale, we must not be afraid to reorientate our long-standing incentive structures, which have been having such perverse effects on our planetary environment and on nature herself, if we are to reap the benefits afforded by a more sustainable world. Thirdly, we must redesign systems and pathways to advance net zero transitions globally. And in this regard, carbon pricing can form a critical pathway to genuinely sustainable markets. This reset moment is our opportunity to accelerate and align our efforts to create truly global momentum. Countries, industries, and businesses moving together can create efficiencies and economies of scale that will allow us to leapfrog our collective progress and accelerate our transition. Fourthly, we must reinvigorate science, technology, and innovation. This crisis has shown the importance of investing in science, technology, and innovation. We are on the verge of catalytic breakthroughs that will alter our view of what is possible and profitable within the framework of a sustainable future. And fifthly, we must rebalance investment. Accelerating sustainable investment could offer significant economic growth and employment opportunities, including in green energy, the regeneration of nature and landscapes, circular bioeconomy, ecotourism, and green public infrastructure. We have a unique but rapidly shrinking window of opportunity to learn lessons and reset ourselves on a more sustainable path. It is an opportunity we have never had before and may never have again. So we must use all the levers we have at our disposal, knowing that each and every one of us has a vital role to play.
Charles, the eco-fascist. As the Telegraph has reported, Charles will continue to push the green agenda from the throne. However, he will highlight rather than campaign in the manner he has done for decades. In his first televised address to the nation last Friday, Charles said, "It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to charities and issues for which I care for so deeply, but I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others," end quote. As the Telegraph reported, it is unlikely the monarch will attend COP27. It is also unlikely he will abandon his life's work. During COP27 climate talks later this year, the Terra Carta Action Forum, a 10-year so-called recovery plan for the private sector, is due to take place. It is being hosted by the King's Sustainable Market Initiative, SMI. The SMI is a collaboration between Charles and the WEF and was launched by Charles at Davos in 2020 under the mandate of the Terra Carta. The SMI and Terra Carta are two of the three instruments Charles launched simultaneously, the third being the Sustainable Markets Council. The Terra Carta. The Terra Carta, deriving its name from the historic Magna Carta, is a 17-page Earth Charter created by Charles and released on the 11th of January 2021. It asserts that the fundamental rights and values of nature must be placed at the core of the global economy. It aims to raise and invest $10 billion, that's £7.3 billion, over the next decade. The voluntary framework commits companies and investors to ensure their businesses are aligned with preserving the world's biodiversity, protecting 50% of the biosphere by mid-century, and achieving net zero emissions by 2050. In the lead up to the COP26, Charles continued his Terra Carta campaign. Sir Johnny Ive of the Royal College of Art partnered with Charles to host the Terra Carta Design Lab at COP26. The goal was to work with students to create small designs that can make a big impact on the world's transition to a sustainable future. Topics that students addressed included reducing greenhouse gases, increasing biodiversity, and supporting environmentally focused economic development for developing countries. According to the SMI's website, the lab was made possible through the support of SMI's partners, the Royal College of Art, the Climate Pledge, Octopus Energy, and Bank of America. The Climate Pledge was co-founded by Amazon and Global Optimism in 2019. Global Optimism was co-founded by Christiana Figueres and Tom Rivett-Carnac after leaving their employment at the United Nations in 2016. They were both involved in the processes that secured the Paris Agreement on climate change. One of the 4 winners of the Terracotta Lab design was ZELP for designing a wearable device for cattle to neutralize methane emissions in real time. SMI claims that 1.6 billion cattle, each exhaling 400 liters of methane per day, are one of the single leading causes of global warming, a claim which is refuted and makes ZELP's designs appear more than a little crazy. The Sustainable Markets Initiative. In his speech at Davos in 2020, Charles said, quote, "With 2020 being seen as the super year, kickstarting a decade of action for people and planet, there is also an opportunity to bring sustainable markets into focus in each of this year's major global meetings. It is my greatest possible hope that you will join me this year in accelerating the transition to sustainable markets and rapid decarbonization." The SMI's mission is to build a coordinated global effort to enable the private sector to accelerate the transition to a sustainable future. So far, over 500 CEOs have pledged their support and 47 organizations have been given the Terracotta Seal. The seal is given to corporations who have aligned themselves with the Terracotta and are driving innovation and leadership within their industry. Recipients of the seal have been assessed by Corporate Knights, a Canadian company founded in 2002 by Toby Heaps and Paul Fengler. Sustainable Markets Council. A Sustainable Markets Council, or Brain Trust, was launched simultaneously with SMI by Charles at Davos in 2020. It was established by Charles a few months earlier in September 2019 as an advisory body of public, private, and philanthropic leaders with a clear commitment to sustainability. It aims to demonstrate the potential of sustainable market creation. The Council has 17 founding council members, although WEF only lists 16, which may indicate that Charles is the 17th. Charles's Global War. In a video recorded at the launch of Climate Week in New York in September 2020, Charles called for a new Marshall-like plan to fight global climate change, a reference to the US plan to aid Europe after World War II. At COP26, he escalated this warlike rhetoric, calling for a military-style campaign.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. Climate change and biodiversity loss are no different. In fact, they pose an even greater existential threat, to the extent that we have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing. Having myself had the opportunity of consulting many of you over these past 18 months, I know you all carry a heavy burden on your shoulders, and you do not need me to tell you that the eyes and hopes of the world are upon you, to act with all dispatch and decisively, because time has quite literally run out. The recent IPCC report gave us a clear diagnosis of the scale of the problem. We know what we must do. With a growing global population creating ever-increasing demand on the planet's finite resources, we have to reduce emissions urgently and take action to tackle the carbon already in the atmosphere, including from coal-fired power stations. Putting a value on carbon, thus making carbon capture solutions more economical, is therefore absolutely critical. Similarly, after billions of years of evolution, nature is our best teacher. In this regard, restoring natural capital, accelerating nature-based solutions, and leveraging the circular bioeconomy will be vital to our efforts. As we tackle this crisis, our efforts cannot be a series of independent initiatives running in parallel. The scale and scope of the threat we face call for a global systems-level solution based on radically transforming our current fossil fuel-based economy to one that is genuinely renewable and sustainable. So, ladies and gentlemen, my plea today is for countries to come together to create the environment that enables every sector of industry to take the action required. We know this will take trillions, not billions of dollars. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders. It offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition. So, how do we do it? First, how do we get the private sector all pulling in the same direction? After nearly 2 years now of consultation, CEOs have told me that we need to bring together global industries to map out, in very practical terms, what it will take to make the transition. We know from the pandemic that the private sector can speed up timelines dramatically when everyone agrees on the urgency and the direction. So each sector needs a clear strategy to speed up the process of getting innovations to market. Second, who pays and how? We need to align private investment behind these industry strategies to help finance the transition efforts, which means building the confidence of investors so that the financial risk is reduced. Crucially, investment is needed to help transition from coal to clean energy. If we can develop a pipeline of many more sustainable and bankable projects at a sufficient scale, it will attract greater investment. Third, which switches do we flick to enable these objectives? More than 300 of the world's leading CEOs and institutional investors have told me that alongside the promises countries have made, their nationally determined contributions, they need clear market signals agreed globally so that they have the confidence to invest without the goalposts suddenly moving. This is the framework I've offered in the Terracotta Roadmap created by my Sustainable Markets Initiative, with nearly 100 specific actions for acceleration. Together, we are working to drive trillions of dollars in support of transition across 10 of the most emitting and polluting industries. They include energy, agriculture, transportation, health systems, and fashion. The reality of today's global supply chains means that industry transition will affect every country and every producer in the world. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the private sector is ready to play its part and to work with governments to find a way forward. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, many of your countries I know are already feeling the devastating impact of climate change through ever-increasing droughts, mudslides, floods, hurricanes, cyclones and wildfires, as we've just seen on that terrifying film. Any leader who has had to confront such life-threatening challenges knows that the cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of prevention. So I can only urge you, as the world's decision makers, to find practical ways of overcoming differences so we can all get down to work together to rescue this precious planet and save the threatened future of our young people.
Here's Charles calling for the global private sector to remove all the authority of national governments, who are our elected representatives, and take charge through military-style action, i.e. a coup d'etat. No, thank you, Charles. No to your Terra Carta, no to your carbon tax, or any other money-making scheme to profit from life itself, and no to your global war. We are not at war for or with Earth's climate. It is a form of insanity to think that climate, which has always been changing since the Earth was first formed, can be controlled. We certainly don't want the global private sector making decisions regarding, let alone in charge of, anything that affects our lives, our nature, or our planet. And that brings us to the end of this episode. I hope you found it informative, and if you did, please make sure to check out the expose at their website expose-news.com for further articles. And until next time, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening, and wherever you are, whenever you are, whatever you are, have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.